Thank you for joining me for this video about SAP Visual Intelligence. We will be talking about accessing, manipulating, and merging data. So first we'll access a HANA data source and import the data, which is actual sales. And the first thing we'll do is manipulate this data to clean it up a little bit. Next, we'll connect to an XLS spreadsheet that contains targets. To use those targets in the same graphs as the actual cells, we'll merge the data together. With that, let's get started. Thank you for joining me for this video about SAP Visual Intelligence. In this video, we will be talking about accessing, manipulating, and merging data. So let's start by how do we access data. Well, let's go ahead and click on New Document on the top left. And here we see we have multiple ways to access various data sources. If your data is stored in a text file, you can use the CSV data source. If your data is in a relational database and you are courageous, you can write freehand SQL. We'll talk about HANA in a minute. You can access data that's stored in an Excel spreadsheet. Or if your data is stored in some other data source and you happen to have SAP Business Objects Enterprise, you can use a universe to access this data. Now, in our example today, we'll be using SAP HANA. You can access online, and that means the data stays in SAP HANA on the server. And Visual Intelligence is constantly interacting with HANA to get the data at the right aggregation level. That's why it's called online. You keep interacting with SAP HANA. The other way of doing is to import the data in Visual Intelligence. It is still stored in a very optimized fashion for analysis. The good thing about this is in offline mode you can manipulate the data, and we'll see that in a minute. So let's go ahead and choose HANA offline. We'll use our usual server, which is i659.290.361.sapvcm.com. The instance is 00. The username is STS demo user, and the password is capital S, small a, small p, 12345. That's SAP with the capital S, 12345. So let's go ahead and click on connect. I'm connected to the server, and I'm going to choose the STS analytic view. So let's go to the bottom right here and click on acquire all. And now Visual Intelligence is importing the data from HANA. So we have acquired our data, and the default view when you import or acquire data is the data view, as you can see it here, where you have facets, one for each attribute. And the benefit of this is you can see unique values for each attribute. So I can see that in my whole data set, doesn't matter how many million lines of data that is, we have only 5 different regions. We have a certain number of countries. And if I look at cities, I see that I have some mistakes here. If I look at Marseille, for instance, there's an S in the spelling. This is incorrect. And I can probably spot others. I can see Medellin here is supposed to have 2 L's. So that can create problems. So before we fix the problem in the data, let's see what's the impact of this. If I create a geographic hierarchy by right-clicking on city name and choosing by name, and I want cities to be drawn from the city name attribute, when I click on OK, well, most of the cities have been found by SAP Visual Intelligence list of cities around the world, but some of them have not been found, and that's where we found Marseille because of a spelling problem, Medellin as well, and Prague doesn't have an S either. So these have not been found. For others, there's some ambiguity, but we'll come back to this later. So let's cancel for now. Let's go back to the data view. And let's go to Marseille. And on the right, we can pull the manipulation tools, which allow me to fix data. So if I'm looking at Marseille here, I could replace Marseille without an S and click on do it. So as soon as I do it, I can see that the data has been fixed. There are other problems. I think there's a problem with Prague here, where we have an S. Let's fix that as well. And then Medellin takes 2 L's. Now you can also do more advanced things like removing leading and trailing characters, which is for some reason often the case. You might also want to group values together. For instance, I see if I'm sorting this way, I can see Paris and Marseille are together. I might want to group those two cities because the Marseille branch has been merged with the Paris branch. Well, I want to group them together and be one value, and that would be Paris. So now all the lines between Marseille and Paris are all associated with the Paris city. So this is how you manipulate data in visual intelligence. So now let's see how it looks when I create a geography hierarchy on the city. Again, I right click by name. I'm going to use the city name as the city and click on OK. So now we still have some ambiguities here and there, but these I can probably resolve. Vancouver is Vancouver from Canada. London is London from the UK. Kyoto is a correct guess, Kyoto from Japan. And Barcelona is the one from Spain, not the one from Venezuela. So I'll click on OK, and I have fixed my city attribute, which allows me now to create a map. For instance, if I want to look at my sales number per country, I'll double click on country, click on the map, and maybe double click on unit sales. So now I see my sales volume per country on the map. Now the nice thing about this is we're looking at the country level. Well, I did not associate country to any of my attributes. The roll-up that we are seeing here is built-in visual intelligence. So let's remove the regions here and the sub-regions. And I can go down a bit closer. I'll zoom in on the map. I can use the plus button or the mouse wheel. And if I go down to France, so let's double click and it goes down to the city, we see that there's only one city. Remember, we have grouped Marseille and Paris together. So I'll go back up to the higher level, and if I go to, let's pan the map and go to Japan, well, I can see I have my 3 cities of Japan represented here. And as I zoom in, you've noticed that the labels are displayed only when they don't overlap. So it's an optimized way of displaying data. So we have fixed data using the manipulation tools. Let's take a look at merging data. So we are back in visual intelligence. I have reset my view. What if I wanted to look at my net sales per year, but I want to compare that with actuals, compare these actuals with my targets. My targets are stored in an Excel spreadsheet, so I'll go ahead and click on the Add button at the top right and choose the Excel data source and click on Browse to find my Excel spreadsheet, which is on my desktop, and it's called Sales Targets. The Sales Targets spreadsheet is very simple. There are 2 columns and 5 lines. The first line indicates the name of the column, and then I have 4 years worth of data and a target number for each year. So it's very simple. I don't have anything to do here. I'm going to use all the columns, and I'll go ahead and acquire the data. It's showing me the content of the Excel spreadsheet in the data view, but I want to go back to visualize, and you'll notice here that target is an attribute, but it's not a measure, so I cannot display targets per year. So I'll right click on target and create a measure. So now I have my target, and I can change the aggregation function. Now if I go back to my actual data source, which is analytic, the STS analytic view, I can see my sales actuals per year on this bar chart. I don't see yet the targets as a measure available here, and the reason is we haven't merged the data together. So I'll go ahead at the top right and click on merge. I want to merge the calendar year number attribute that's coming from HANA with the year column coming from Excel. With that, I'll click on merge, and now we have merged those two data sources together. I have the targets available to me. I can put it here. Of course, we want to compare that, so maybe we'll use a combine graph so I can compare those values together and see when I hit my target, like in 04, when I was just on target or just below in 06. So that's how you access data, manipulate values when you have data that's not been cleansed, and how you merge data sources together, all in SAP Visual Intelligence. With that, I'll thank you for your attention.